The Necromancer has returned. After much speculation, research, and consideration, we finally have our full 5-class roster for Diablo 4. Rising into the ranks of our would-be heroes comes the Grave Fiddler themselves, the Priests of Rathma. Tails, our lore master, is absolutely beside himself, since he was the one who first wrote the speculation videos around his favorite class returning. And while I am genuinely disappointed there won't be a holy warrior archetype making its return in Diablo 4, yet it is good to have the roster finally filled out, and this month's quarterly update is full of information regarding class features, spells, and abilities. So, without further ado, let's plunder the crypt of the Necromancer in Diablo 4.
Hell is coming, brother. Hell is coming.
Our spells are not so different from other mages, except that they pertain to life and death, and we use them to uphold the balance. To do otherwise is heresy.
Starting off, we take a look at the core class features surrounding the Necromancer. Returning to the forefront of gameplay focus is Essence, the essential resource the class utilizes for its various spells and abilities. Without doing anything, the Necro's essence returns very slowly normally, but utilizing basic abilities will build essence faster to be used for bigger spells which may or may not consume the next resource. Of course, a spellcaster who deals in the magic of life and death would utilize the fallen remains of their victims in various forms, from major horde-clearing explosions to raising skeletal minions, a return to form from Diablo 2, which was sorely missed in Diablo 3 and Immortal, among various other things. Corpses will not only be created from slaughtering enemies, but also from other sources, which will likely revolve around pets, such as when a skeletal mage or minion is dismissed or killed, leaving behind the corpse that was utilized to create them, taking Going Green to a new level.
Silent Green is people!
Corpses have always made up a huge part of the Necromancer's arsenal focus, and that remains true even into Diablo 4, as many other options are being made available for players that really want to lean in and focus on this particularly gruesome aspect of the class. Additionally, curses are once again taking a major focus in the Necromancer's gameplay, which were utilized quite heavily in Diablo 2, but only for a select number of builds in Diablo 3 and virtually non-existent in Immortal, as some would say the game itself is the curse. Thank you, I'm here all day. As a general weapon preference, the Necromancers of Diablo 4 utilize swords, daggers, of course, wands, focuses, shields, and are the only class in the game able to utilize scythes, which takes center stage in one of their abilities, Reap, which swings the scythe in a large sweeping arc, resembling the Grim Scythe ability from Diablo 3, but takes a more physical approach than its predecessor. The armor appearance for the Necromancer in Diablo 4 also takes a rather grim approach, and quite literally in some cases, ranging anywhere from the typical bone motifs and designs from previous titles, and even going into darker, gorier territory with over-the-top gothic fantasy designs, and all the way to the monstrously morbid, with exposed flesh, rib cages, and intestinal cavities exposed. A very on-the-nose approach to the class's theme. The Necromancer returns with familiar skill concepts from previous games as well, with one new category previously unseen in other titles, starting off with the most familiar, Bone. The most recognizable form of magic is anything pertaining to the use of bones. The physicality of the magic type benefits from factors like critical strike, and provides a visible and visceral quality to the spells within the category. Two great examples of spells making a return in D4 are Bone Spirit and Bone Prison. The animations we see with the spell Bone Prison shows the Necromancer slamming their scythe down to the ground, causing bone to protrude from the earth around several enemies. The Necromancer then proceeds to summon a vengeful spirit to attack the trapped fiends, exploding on impact and leaving nothing but corpses in its wake, which again, recycling, anybody? The Diablo 4 variation of Bone Spirit consumes all essence, dealing additional damage per additional point of essence spent, and then goes into a cooldown timer. It can even be spec'd to reduce its cooldown timer and essence cost when it deals a critical hit. The physical variations and spell casting motions add to the depth that the programmers are adding into Diablo 4. In this same category, we can see that Grim Scythe, which used to be a spectral attack in Diablo 3, is now a physical attack utilizing the Necromancer's own scythe. In that same spirit, the physical bone spear of Diablo 3 is now a spectral ability like it was in Diablo 2. This is a continuation of the more holistic approach devs are taking in this latest installment of the Diablo franchise. And of course, what has more bones in a necromancer's arsenal than an army of skeletons, skeletal mages, or golems? When we initially started making predictions on the 5th class, we had speculated that due to the seeming lack of focus on pet builds surrounding the druid, they were saving the big pet or summoner focus for the necromancer if they weren't going to lean more into the pet aspect for the druid. This build works in conjunction with builds around other spell types, such as bone, blood, or even darkness to produce corpses and deal additional damage. And yes, corpses are now needed once again to summon your army, using abilities like Bone Spear, Reap, or Decompose to generate corpses from slain enemies, then following up with the Raise Skeleton ability to bring up skeletal minions out of those slain corpses, as we do in Diablo 2. Raising skeletons is activated via a specific skill on your spellbar, which simply raises your army, while the Summon Golem button works as it did in Diablo 3, activating a specific ability depending on which golem you summon, be it bone, flesh, or iron. Your army can be augmented and customized beyond this utilizing the Necromancer's special class trait, which we will discuss in a bit. Before that though, blood magic makes its return in Diablo 4 as well, taking center stage in defensive builds by siphoning life to build up maximum health, as well as keeping their health full, and in addition to heavy damage spells such as Blood Surge, which draws in life before expelling it outward in a huge blood nova, the animation of which lends credit to the idea that the Blood Bishop, who we saw in the initial announcement of Diablo 4 in 2019, is related in some fashion to the Necromancers, as he demonstrates several abilities that have the same blood tendril appearance as the Necromancer. We even see one possible tattoo choice, a mark on the forearm that is the same updated Zakarum cross that we've seen many times since, and even adorns the Blood Bishop on two different parts of its body, speaking more to the ambiguity of story paths for your own character, as Rod Ferguson and Joe Shelley have so heavily tried to hammer home on the point of player agency. Blood Rush also returns as an ability called Blood Mist, transfiguring the Necro into a living cloud of bloody ephemera, which allows you to move through hordes or enemies unmolested, while simultaneously dealing damage in kind. Last but not least, the newcomer to the Necromancer's magic arsenal, Darkness Magic. Speaking to returning to darkness, the Necromancer, much like the Rogue, now utilizes darkness itself to deal with the hordes of hell. Instead of utilizing poison to create the aspect of decay, the Necromancer now leans into the all-consuming, entropic facets of the shadows themselves, creating long periods of damage over time and other benefits to the caster, such as Decompose, which, like Blood Drain of Diablo 3, siphons life off the enemy, dealing damage while replenishing essence and generating corpses to keep the Necromancer's resources available for their abilities. Another ability showcased showcased in this update is Blight, which launches a ball of shadow energy in one direction, and if it makes impact or expires, it explodes, dealing tons of damage and leaving a zone of decay that damages the enemy more over time. A great ability to pair with Bone Prison, locking the enemy in place and giving them grief while you worry about other enemies. Along with the ability Raised Skeleton that you'll receive upon starting the game, you also gain access to the Book of the Dead, the unique class mechanic for the Necromancer. Barbarians have their arsenal. Druids seamlessly shapeshift, sorceresses can of course enchant themselves through spellwork, and rogues imbue their weapons. However, necromancers have hard focus on their undead legions, or even lack thereof. The Book of the Dead allows you to assign roles to your skeletal minions, such as skeletal skirmishers, which have increased attack and reduced health, defenders with high health, and reapers, which deal damage in an area of effect in front of them. Skeletal mages and golems can also be customized using this tool, though the full scope of which is currently unknown to us for now. The other side of this feature allows the player to sacrifice their minion types for permanent buffs, allowing for more builds focused on the lack of pets rather than their presence to a partial degree, or allowing the player to be bereft of pets entirely in favor of more direct builds revolving around their other spell types. So this feature both augments the pets of the character and/or the character themselves, allowing it to seamlessly be utilized even if pet builds aren't desired by the player. It's great to finally see all 5 characters come together as well, along with the announcement at Microsoft Games Showcase that all games shown will be out in the next 12 months, the likelihood that we'll see Diablo 4 in full release by the end of second quarter June in 2023 and a beta beforehand. This is what we've been building up to for years, and it's so good to see it, and it's great to see it so close around the corner. It's time to dive in deeper and see if more of our theories have panned out, or perhaps didn't, and where the lore is going to be taken in what the devs referred to as a soft reset for the franchise. And moving away from Diablo 3 and Immortal, returning to the themes present in Diablo 2, we've got to say, is a great move by Blizzard.